A huge obstacle to getting humanitarian aid into Gaza are the border checks Israel insists on making before trucks are allowed to enter. Supplies arrive in Egypt on cargo ships at Port Said or by plane at Al Arish airport. Aid trucks due to enter Gaza are then checked by Israeli authorities at Nitzana, then cross back into Egypt, where they head to the Rafah crossing. The last time any truck was allowed to pass through Rafah was February the 4th. Or they go to the Israeli-controlled Karem Abu Salem crossing for inspection and to enter from there. Now, before the war began, around 500 trucks a day crossed into Gaza through Karem Abu Salem, but almost none are getting through now. We can speak to Alex de Waal, who's the Executive Director at the World Peace Foundation, and he's also the author of Mass Starvation, The History and Future of Famine, joining us from Somerville in Massachusetts. Thanks for your time with us on Al Jazeera. You recently wrote a piece in which you said there's no instance since the Second World War in which an entire population has been reduced to extreme hunger and destitution with such speed. Can you elaborate on that and tell us what you're basing it on?
So I've been studying famine, and particularly man-made famine, the use of starvation as a war crime, for 40 years. I've looked at cases around the world: Yemen, Ethiopia, Sudan, Syria. And the cases that are most obviously comparable in recent history are the sieges of Syrian cities by the Assad regime. But nothing is comparable in terms of the speed and the concentrated effort at destroying what is essential to sustain the life of people. Nothing compares to Gaza over the last 75 years. And the speed of deterioration of humanitarian conditions is absolutely terrifying.
Would you say that this is a sort of a byproduct of the war, or is it a direct result of Israel's declared policy? I mean, we heard from one of the ministers back in October who declared that there will be no electricity, no food, no water to enter Gaza. And what we see more recently is that certain border crossings, Israeli settlers are preventing food and humanitarian aid from entering Gaza.
Certainly, there's no doubt that certain senior members of the Israeli government and certain groups within Israeli society have the intent of starving Gaza. What is absolutely clear also is that the military actions undertaken by the Israeli Defense Forces have that predictable and knowable effect. And really, at this stage, it doesn't really matter what is the ultimate intent, whether the International Court of Justice will find that Israel is responsible for the crime of genocide or not. What we know now is that they are knowingly pursuing military actions in the full knowledge that this will be the outcome. The Famine Review Committee and the highest international humanitarian assessment body made that determination back in December, that if their military tactics did not change, unless there was a full spectrum of relief operations, Gaza would be in famine. The International Court of Justice 3 weeks ago gave instructions to Israel that it had to do certain things. It has done nothing of that. So it is knowingly creating these conditions, and undoubtedly that is unlawful.
Right. And you also say that unless Israel changes course, which you just kind of alluded to, that they haven't since that ICJ ruling, that it could be legally culpable for mass starvation. And you also say if the US and UK fail to use every possible lever to stop the catastrophe, they then will be complicit. My question is in two parts. As an occupying power, what are the Israeli government's duties, first of all, in ensuring civilians have access to food and water? And what can the U.S., what should the U.S. and UK do to avoid their complicity?
Well, Israel is under an absolute obligation, regardless of whether it's an occupying power or not, of complying with what the ICJ said. And the particular provision there is that it is inflicting on the group, that is Palestinians in Gaza, conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction. And it had to desist from doing that. And it has had 3 weeks to begin to do that. And on the contrary, it has intensified its activities. Now, next week, Israel has to report to the ICJ on the actions that it has taken. And clearly, the report will not be satisfactory. And then it will be in breach of additional obligations that it has under international law. And then that brings the United States in particular into a very, very uncertain legal position, because it may find, as the United States, that it has been complicit in crimes, possibly the crime of genocide, and certainly in enabling Israel to violate the instructions of the ICJ. And quite apart from the absolute horrors of the destruction of the people of Gaza and everything that sustains life there, that this brings us into very perilous, uncharted legal and political territory.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We thank you so much, Alex de Waal, for joining us from Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you.